We already pay millions and millions of dollars to this problem, but they're not fixing it. If you built a home for everyone that's living on the street, and there's no one living on the street anymore, everybody's got a house, a bunch of things are going to happen. People will start dying from overdose in those houses. They will turn into the next slums, and people from all over the United States are going to come here with their hand up and saying, I don't have a house either, build me one. It will be a perpetual building program that will cost us billions. That's not the answer. The homelessness is a symptom of the core problem. You can go down to King County and you can have 6 or 7 grams of heroin on you, and the police will not arrest you because the prosecutors won't prosecute. Because the left says that it's not compassionate to put an addict in jail. But I have found exactly the opposite to be true. When I was part of the narcotics task force, we had zero tolerance policy for heroin and meth. If you had residue of heroin in a baggie, that's a felony in this state, and we enforced it. We would arrest people, they would go to jail, they'd see the judge, and the judge would give them a choice. They could go to treatment or they could go to prison or jail, depending on the severity of their crime. That's what it takes. And a funny thing started happening. People would come back after getting their head clear and their lives back together, and they'd come up and give me a hug and say, thank you for saving my life, because they couldn't quit heroin on their own. It took tough love. And that's what we have to do. We can't leave them stuck in a cycle of addiction on the street like the left wants to do. To me, that's cruelty. There's one young man in particular. You know, most people don't want to go public with things like that, but one young man was very brave when he agreed to talk about this on camera. Last fall, I was in Republic, and a reporter named Brandy Cruz. Have you guys heard of Brandy Cruz? She's on Q13. She does a show called The Divide, and she was over there interviewing me about my stance on this so-called homeless crisis and my run for governor. And while we were on the street of Republic talking, John Donner went by. John Donner, to me, is a hero, but he was a former narcotics dealer. He was dealing narcotics to support his own habit. And he went by while I was talking to Brandy on camera, and I said, would you like to talk to a former drug dealer? And she said, absolutely. And so I got a hold of John. He came over and talked to Brandy, and he told her exactly what I just said. You know, he could not quit narcotics on his own. He needed that tough love. He said he hated my guts at first because I was ruining his life. But after he got his head cleared and got off the narcotics, he got his 2 little kids back that he lost when he got arrested, you know, because the state doesn't let children live with drug dealers, right? But he got his 2 little kids back, he got a job, he got married, and just this last fall they bought a home, and they're productive members of our community right now. And that, to me, is compassion. Right now, as I said, we spend millions and millions of dollars on this problem. There's treatment facilities all over the state. But when you take state funding, mostly state funding, you have to follow the state rules. And the state rules say that you have to be a zero threshold entry program, which means people can come and go as they please. There's hardly any rules, but they don't get a very high success rate. In fact, most of them, if they will even tell you what their success rate is in the single digits, percentage-wise. But I toured a facility down in southwestern Washington that used to take state funding, but they weren't getting results. So their board of directors got together and said, we have to change this. So they talked to local businesses, they talked to people in the community that could donate, and they don't take hardly any state funding anymore. They changed the rules. They have locks on the doors, they have security cameras, they have security guards, they have drug counselors, mental health counselors, they've got a daycare for children, you know, family units that are in there getting help when mom and dad have to go to counseling or go look for a job or go to their job. And they used to be single-digit success, right? Since they changed their model, they've gone from single-digit success rates to 78% success. That's huge. want that model to be used all across the state of Washington. That's success. That's compassion. Leaving people stuck in the street in the cycle of addiction is nothing like compassion. It's horrible. If we're going to be spending that much money, we need to make sure that it's used wisely and we help people. You guys are amazing. I've never seen so many smiling faces at a Culp rally before. I love Skagit County. So let's talk about education a little bit, shall we? Yeah. I firmly believe that parents are in charge of their children, not the state. Parents should be in charge of where their children are educated and how they're educated. I want more local control. I want to get rid of that big bureaucracy at the state level that sucks up most of the funding for our schools. You guys have heard of this recent sex ed bill that passed, right? It's disgusting. It's like a bunch of pedophiles got together and wrote it up. It's absolutely ridiculous. I want you to know, that's something Jay Inslee signed into law. I want you to know 3 rules that I have for any bill that comes across my desk as your next governor. Number 1, is it constitutional? The Constitution is the rule book for our government. It tells them what they can and can't do, right? Number 2, will it help the citizens of Washington State? Not special interest groups, the citizens of Washington State. And number 3, can we afford it without any new taxes? We pay far too many taxes right now. I am for smaller, less intrusive government, less regulations, and lower taxes. And I will fight like no one you have ever seen to achieve that. I get asked a lot about forced vaccines, right? Jay Inslee said we're supposed to wear masks until there's a vaccine for this virus, right? I don't believe that a government agent or agency should be telling us what to put in our bodies. That is entirely up to us. I'm a firm believer in individual liberty, and that's our choice. Government's not going to tell me what to put in my body. That's a choice of parents for their kids, and for the parents and all of us as individuals. Individual freedom and liberty. So does anybody want to talk about or go down and visit Chaz or Chop or whatever it's called now? Have they got a new name yet? What a joke. So, don't get me wrong. We have a First Amendment right to peaceably assemble, right? It's in the First Amendment. Protected by the Constitution. And to protest the death of Mr. Floyd, absolutely yes. He was murdered by that police officer from the video that I saw. Absolutely uncalled for, and I hope they get swift and severe justice for what they did to that man. But when your peaceful protest turns into breaking windows and looting businesses and lighting buildings on fire and lighting cars on fire, throwing rocks and frozen water bottles at the police, that's no longer a constitutionally protected right, correct? That turned into a riot, which is a crime. There are people that live and work in that area, and they deserve law and order just like all of us do. And what happened is it got out of control, it turned into a riot, and the local police asked for backup from the Washington National Guard. Now, Jay Inslee is the commander-in-chief of the Washington National Guard as the governor. He's never served in the military. He has no idea what they do or how they're trained. When I was in the Army in basic training, I trained with National Guard and Reserve troops, received the same training, and then when I was training troops, I trained National Guard and Reserve. They received the same training that regular Army does. But Jay Inslee sent them in there at the request of local law enforcement, but he told them that they had to go in there unarmed. And then he announced it to the world and the criminals that I'm sending in the National Guard, but they're unarmed. They don't have the means to protect themselves or others or property. Does that make sense to anyone? No. They are going in there because things have gotten out of control and local law enforcement can't handle it. They're going in there as a show of force to shut it down. But he sends our young men and women in there unarmed, without the ability to protect themselves. That was absolutely ridiculous.